Mayor Monge.
Here. Thank you. I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please.
So moved.
So move. Councilmember Woods.
I'll second.
Second, Councilmember McKenzie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Topics.
Thank you, Mayor. You got one topic on track for tonight. We are going to be addressing code enforcement again. So good night to ask any questions you guys might have, whether or not it's, procedure, logistics, things like that. And I will turn that over to Fire Chief Malinger.
Hello, Mayor and council members. Put together a short PowerPoint presentation just to kind of help guide our conversation tonight. Some of what we'll do is review the 2025 code compliance numbers, what we've done so far this year, and talk about our proactive inspections and problems we encounter with getting violations completed, changes to the code that can help us, and some legal options when progress has not been achieved. And I appreciate Jack, our city attorney, coming to help along the way, answer any questions that I may not be able to. But with that, we'll get started. At any point you have questions for me, feel free to ask away. Sure, I'm on the, yeah, I feel like we missed a page. Okay, so code compliance numbers to date. So these code violations that are going to be listed on this page are ones that basically are entered in by staff here. So they predominantly are inspections that they may see or encounter throughout the proactive enforcement. But as you can see, the majority of what's being dealt with on this list has been related to tall grass and weeds. Vehicles, parking in the front yard are basically what we deal with. We don't deal with on-street parking. We work with PD on that. So if we do get a complaint for on-street stuff, we'll work with PD on turning it over to them or letting them know. Garbage and debris cleanup, 18 of those. Property maintenance, that could probably be exterior property or even property related to the home as well. Hit the button.
Sorry. Most of the property maintenance ones, I will usually use that for maybe a couple different things. So if I roll to a property and they've got a vehicle parked in the front yard, trash all over the yard, tall grass, it's kind of an overall property maintenance issue, and then I'll go in and add the different violations that I'm seeing. Sometimes it's just easier to do that rather than 3 different.
Sure, separate. All right, snow removal during the winter, and that's just from January on, 33 of those. Tree issues, even though there's 15 listed, there's probably been more of those as conversations that we've had throughout the year. And that's something that, Jack and I have talked about, and City Manager Frandl as well. As things have changed over the past few years. It used to be where tree issues were far and few in between to be an issue for us. But with the emerald ash borer, it's created a big problem throughout the entire city for our residents. And primarily what we have been doing has been notifying the property owners of dead and diseased trees. One, that we have complaints or concerns with their neighbors or somebody else that it could be affecting their neighbor's property. We're not necessarily going out proactively looking for all the dead and diseased trees throughout the city, but if we do see them, we let them know. But it's also most recently come to a little bit later, we'll talk about abatements and issues, but as it relates to trees. But that's an issue in the past that we didn't do a whole lot of, and potentially where we're at now, because of the emerald ash borer, we may have to change that thought process a little bit and deal with those. 4 of those others that include depositing materials on the street, 20 unauthorized burns, so that those could be anywhere from they're just burning outside the hours. They may have a correct recreational fire, but they're outside the hours, or they're illegally burning things during that time as well. And then 3 animal complaint type issues. We also have a separate area within OpenGov that allows our residents to submit their complaints directly into OpenGov. We had 53 of those. 24 of those were related to garbage. And 22 were kind of across the board. They could have been sidewalk obstruction, broken window, construction trailers, junk in the yard, car parts, illegal dumping, etc. And 7 of those, they did not click on the problem. They usually left their concerns in the notes where we just had to read through. And once we do that as well, we have an opportunity to reply back to them through the OpenGov process. But I think Mackenzie has found a lot of times people just make the complaint and kind of move on from there. So I know in the spring, we talked about starting and doing more proactive inspections, even though while we're out in the streets, no matter what, if we see something, we were taking care of it. But we've started a program of just basically picking a block or 2 that we wanted to focus on maybe once every couple of weeks, and just go through that area and specifically look for any major concerns and just kind of mark it on a map and try and get through some areas proactively. But again, we have staff, whether it's police, public works, fire, or whoever, if they see something, say something and let us know, or let Mackenzie know so we can get the process started and keep moving forward. The time frame to correct a violation, it's dependent upon what type of violation we have going on. If something's going on that we can stop immediately, like if we know somebody's actively dumping in the street or dumping in the right of way or plowing in the street or blowing in the street, or we see that, we try to get out there right away and communicate that with them and ask them to stop doing that. When we're sending out notices or talking to them, depending on the issue, garbage issues and tall grass and weeds, we try to get those dealt with within a fairly quicker time frame, 3 to 5 days, versus some things that may take a little bit longer, whether it's 5 to 10 days for the yard maintenance or parking in the yard or a trailer parking issue, exterior home property maintenance issues, 10 to 15 days, 15 to 30 days, potentially a tree removal, and that could even extend longer depending on, if they're unable to get somebody out there or the cost of it and unable to deal with it. And that's where kind of on the tree removal piece, again, getting to the abatement process, which we'll talk about later. But pretty much tried to base them on severity of the issues and how bad they are and how they're affecting the neighbors. And definitely a request from the property owner to have more time can be granted when warranted, when there's time. Sometimes they could need more time for completing something, and if they're slowly progressing on something and making progress, we'll work with them on that. But definitely, if we have a severe garbage issue or something that needs to be dealt with right away, we're gonna expect that to be dealt with right away as well. So what do we do when progress has not been achieved? And that becomes the difficult thing, you know. It starts to create, take our inspectors a lot of time, or Mackenzie a lot of time, to conduct multiple inspections or continue to make contact with them, have conversations with them, emails, whatever that may be, to try to help, you know, enforce this violation to get resolved. And we spend a lot of time doing that. Another issue is drafting the summary abatement order that will allow Public Works and us or other city staff to go in and complete the work depending on what it is, if it's mowing the grass or picking up the garbage, whatever that may be. So the summary abatement order process, basically, we use it in extreme situations when no progress has been made, and the city has the resources to handle that. So, example, you know, a vacant property, garbage and debris to be picked up, and/or needs mowing, or the snow removal on neglected sidewalks. Basically, Mackenzie, the code compliance officer, works directly with the Public Works Department on scheduling that. If we issue the nuisance and keep track of the time, the charges will include the costs of the correction, inspection, travel time, equipment, et cetera, and the rate is $240 an hour plus expenses for the abatement. This year so far, we've sent out 4 abatement notices, but we only had to have Public Works do the cleanup on one of those. And again, when that's done, Mackenzie's working with Public Works to make sure that they have the right people and equipment out there, and then she's going out there basically photographing it before and afterwards, just to help document what's being done and keeping track of the time, and basically creating a list of people and equipment that's going to be then given to finance to create an invoice for billing that's going to give to the property owner, bill the property owner. If the property owner doesn't pay, it will then eventually get to being moved to their property taxes to get the payment, which most of the time, that's what happens, or at least has happened in the past. Talk a little bit about the tree issue and the abatement process. So like I was saying earlier, in my 20-plus years here, there has only been once or twice that we've done or had an abatement order for removing of a tree. But as we continue, you know, down this road with the amount of emerald ash borers out there, and the amount of problems that we see or that are being directed towards us, this may be an issue that we have to address a little bit more. And we already have one of those, I should say, one of the 4 abatements that were sent out this year is most recently a tree abatement as well. And it's on private property, obviously, but it also has created many problems. And in this case, for the tree abatement, we had a contractor come out to give us a quote on it, because it also required a crane because the tree was over the house, and the amount of work to be done was pretty intense, and much more, not that our Public Works couldn't handle it, but it was probably just be a better thing to contract that out and let them handle it for that situation. But again, seeing that as a potential issue in the future that we're going to potentially have to do for property owners. And I say that with reluctance. I mean, I don't like that we have to go on some of these property to do that, but if it's also creating a hazard for a neighbor or someone that could be severe damage to their house or cause injury, that's something we have to kind of look at. So that's new to us in that aspect of things. When is legal intervention needed? Well, when no progress has been made, or an area that couldn't be covered by the abatement, summary abatement order. So if we didn't have something that we could necessarily do, typically these are the more severe cases. We haven't had one for a year or two that we've had to have legal help us out. The previous one was a severe case that we had legal on, and they were just refusing to make corrections, and because of the amount of items that were on the exterior property that we believed were garbage and debris that needed to be cleaned up, we wanted that order from the court to tell us what we could do and kind of guide us through that process. Keeps jumping on me. Citation is also another possibility. However, in order for us to currently do a citation, we have to get help from the police department and their program to write the citation. So we need one of their supervisors to write the citation, which would go through their attorney that they use for those types of citations. It's not something that is going through our city attorney in Campbell Knutson. But again, the time frame for that could be 2 to 6 months. And maybe, Jack, you could, I know Brian and I were talking a little bit about this earlier, a citation as it relates to necessarily if they would have the option of paying something right away, or if they have to go before the court to explain themselves.
Yeah, of course. It can depend a little bit on exactly how the citation is, like what they get cited for. Generally speaking, though, for a city code citation violation, usually that is going to be what's called a payable offense, which means they will be issued a citation. They can either, pay the amount or they have to go to court. And so, sometimes you get people who either pay the fine and don't do anything about it, or who just kind of blow off the whole process. And it's usually a low-level enough offense that it takes a really long time for it to escalate to the point where we're, getting a bench warrant and, sending the police out there for them.
So in turn, we could issue this citation, and necessarily we wouldn't have resolution to the problem immediately as well.
And because it's a citation, it's technically it's misdemeanor prosecution through the criminal system. It also necessarily means that pretty much the only thing we can ask the court for is a fine. And so there's not a lot of ongoing court involvement to resolve the underlying issue. It's just sort of, was there a problem on this day? If yes, checkbox, pay fine.
So what happens in a dangerous situation? You can't just pay a fine and then just leave a dangerous situation alone. How would that work?
Well, again, I guess it depends a little bit on what you mean by dangerous situation. I mean, if it's like an immediate, if it's a dog that has attacked someone or is running loose or something like that, that's something where the police department could step in, sort of immediately, right? If there's an ongoing situation. If it's sort of just a hazard that's hanging there, right? A tree that has partially but not fully fallen over that we know is gonna, come down on a public street or something. Again, we're not usually turning to a citation for that. Usually we'd looked for some other, tool in the toolkit.
Yeah.
For the tree example, we do have a process in our ordinance where we would just go take care of it to prevent that from hurting anybody.
Yeah,
And then sort
in
of
the
sort out the
emergency
repayment
situation.
after the fact.
Yeah.
So if there's a current immediate threat to health and safety, usually the remedy for that is the city goes and fixes it, and then is after the fact looking to sort of pin the cost on a property owner or a driver or a dog owner or whoever is created that.
Sure.
But that's open for interpretation. Somebody might say that tree's gonna fall, and the other one say it's fine. So, I mean, that's where it gets to be pretty difficult to,
Yes, and so that's, there's, sometimes it's like you look at it and it's, oh, no, that's an immediate, I mean, we had a situation a year and a half ago or so, I think, where there was, someone had put a house on stilts and removed the foundation to replace it, and then the stilts or whatever, the jacks that the house was on collapsed. And so the whole house was teetering at a, pretty good angle to fall into the hole. That one where we say, okay, now that's a pretty immediate threat. We can act pretty quick on that one. With something where it's sort of a less immediate right now, the tree is not fallen over, but it's leaning more than we want to see. Usually, there's gonna have to be some kind of degree of process on that. We have some administrative sort of abatement order, code provisions that we can go through. If those aren't being listened to, usually then we're looking at trying to get some kind of an injunction from the court, which is the most powerful tool in the toolkit, because we can get a judge involved, we can get a court order for whatever needs to happen. And for the backing of that is up to and including contempt of court, which is where they go to jail and also pay our lawyers' fees. But it takes the longest and the most upfront investment to get there. And so that's kind of the trade-off on something like that.
One thing that we have an advantage of is we have a forestry department, so we have a professional forester that works for the city, so a little more weight behind that when they say that is a dangerous tree, so.
Yeah, and we've definitely have utilized our forester as well. And like Jack was saying, the process that we've talked about recently for those, utilizing his knowledge to help us out with those. And yeah, we did learn in those situations, if we have something that's an emergency or deemed emergency, that we're going to go in and deal with it, along with the summary abatement process. Also learning that if we do end up having to abate something like a tree or anything else where the cost of it would be over $5,000 to get it completed. If it's over $5,000, I have to bring that to you for approval to get that done. Just because basically the code is telling us anything up to $5,000, go ahead and do. But if it's over, we need council approval to go ahead and do that. I should also mention that with our summary abatements, all of them have an appeal process where they can request an appeal either from us or code compliance or the city manager, or even come before city council as well.
if there's something's being escalated, as far as maybe something on the property that needs to be cleaned up and things, does code enforcement tell them that it's working its way through the system? Because I know people call, then the next day they call, and the next day they call until.
Yeah, and that,
Way you can tell them, or you're not allowed to say that.
that's
you know,
the difficult,
that's
difficult
where-
thing. You know, we had to do that before with, so the second one on this list is talking about the summary judgment order through Campbell Knutson that we've used against the property owner. And that can take a long time, but in the end, we were able to get a lot done with that. But during that time, we did have neighbors, approach us, either call us or even come in and want to know what's going on. And that's all we really said is that, honestly, is it's going through the court
You're allowed to
process.
say that much.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So I was
that's,
wondering if it's just.
that's basically, we're just waiting
Okay.
for our time. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I guess one other issue that we run into with these sometimes for the kind of the city abatement process is we have legal authority to address hazards to public health and safety. And sometimes there are issues about what is a public safety threat, as opposed, if the tree is gonna fall over the street, that's a public safety threat. What if it's just gonna fall on their own house? Is that still a public safety threat? And so that's usually where we might, sometimes where it gets a little trickier like that, where we might have to, not be quite as bullish on the administrative action and, go talk to a judge about that first, where there's some question about our authority to act there.
Because any tree that would drop on a person's house, but that next limb could hit the next property's owner, then you got a major issue because the tree property that's on, he's gonna pay for that next homeowner's damage.
Yes, but in some ways, that's still that's a private dispute between neighbors.
Neighbor's right.
And so, we're looking at what's the size of the tree, right? Is it big enough that we're worried it's gonna hit the one property owner's house, but we're gonna damage the gas lines or something? That's a more of a public threat. So it gets very messy very quickly. And because one of the other things is we don't want to be, acting as the law firm for the neighbor, right? If they just really don't like that the tree is over the property line or something, that's a between them concern. And so we try not to be involving ourselves in those kinds of disputes.
But on a civic matter with two homeowners, one homeowner does have the right to trim back a limb that is hanging over his property up to the property line and/or to the base of the tree on the other property, just to make sure it's not gonna damage the tree.
There's some.
So in that situation, I mean, and we've had this happen a lot,
yeah, I do
and
too.
I've seen previous cases on this. So typically in this situation, what we tell, again, the property owners to do is to communicate with their neighbors and ask them to either trim it back for them, because if it's your tree and it's into their property, it would be best.
They are responsible.
Yeah, but if I, as a neighbor, trim your tree, and there's a right way and a wrong way for doing it, and if you trimmed an oak the wrong way at the wrong time and cause it to potentially die, now you're creating another problem for yourself. So we try to educate people a little bit about that and say, hey, talk to them, reach out to them, even, potentially even, document it to the extent of write a letter and ask them to do it. But yeah, if that tree branch is rubbing into your roof or your siding or something and it needs to be done, we understand that, but we also try to educate them to work with their neighbors, but more and more people don't want to do that. They want to call the city and have the city do it, like I was explaining.
And we don't want to get involved in that. One other thing that makes trees a particular minefield is if you are held liable for damage to someone else's tree, you are held liable for 3 times the value of the damage. And there's just a statute about that to prevent people from, the classic scenario, of course, is you walk over and cut your neighbor's tree down because it's, dropping acorns in your pool or whatever. And so the statute is meant to discourage that, but it does mean that, if you go to self-help and you trim it back to, the property line or to what you think is the property line, or if you end up actually doing damage to the overall health of the tree, it can end up being really expensive.
So basically, a homeowner should then contact our city and say, how do I go about doing this for my safety and the neighbor's safety and the tree's health? Because, well, with our arborist here, he would be able to give them a correct way to trim everything back.
Not
He'd
necessarily.
say, no?
So number one recommendation is you should talk to your neighbor.
Right.
Number two recommendation is if that's not working and you are interested in pursuing a self-help trim to the property line, number one, you should be very certain where the property line is, and number two, you should probably hire, an arborist. But that would not necessarily be a service that the city would be
No, no, but
providing.
I'm
That
saying,
would be,
yeah, no. But
You would-
our city guy would be able to give them a recommendation through a letter or whatever. No?
Not necessarily, having an advertisement like that through the city, but there's lots of tree services around.
Right, no, I understand that, yeah.
And we can't play favorites with anybody.
No, I'm
Yeah.
not, I wasn't meaning by that.
Yeah, and I don't think you want to put the city in the middle.
No, I wouldn't, no. Okay, no, I wasn't doing that, so.
Yeah, so the citation process and then the summary judgment order, as we were talking about, are basically the two options really through legal to deal with a lot of code compliance issues, or at least those of the two that I've used. But again, those can take several months, and sometimes you get the goal accomplished, sometimes you don't. That's why we try to just continue on the conversation with people and try to talk to them and get that completed before going any further. But at some point, usually, we know when we're not getting that process completed too and need to go that route. Talk a little bit about the good and the bad and what works, and we've done that a little bit, but a lot of our property owners, a lot of times don't know that there is an ordinance that requires them to maintain something. So we'll take that time to, help educate them and advise them over those situations and to let them know what needs to be done to make it right. Some property owners who don't comply with our requests, a lot of times it can be they're just pushing back and waiting to see how hard we're going to push them to get things completed, or they don't have the resources, the know-how, the money to fix the problem. And these are the ones that reoccur time and time again. If they do get something completed, potentially we could be dealing with them again in the future. But again, constant communication and inspections typically motivate property owners to comply. But we spend the majority of our time with those who don't follow our requirements. I mean, we basically have, well over 200 code compliance issues that she's dealt with so far, but I would venture to guess that, a good probably 25% of them takes up the majority of her time, but because they're not following along and create the most work by conducting inspections, calls, emails, following up with code, talking to legal, a lot of those things where it just continues on instead of having a resolution from the property owner on getting things taken care of.
Do we have anything in the ordinances that say how many pieces of equipment, cars, boats, motor vehicles, whatever, on their property? Is there a code of how much they can actually have? Looks like a
The quick answer is yes, but it also breaks it out, so your driveway, your parking area, you can have as many vehicles on your driveway and parking area as long as there are issues, maybe it could be, you could be on a street that has a sidewalk. Well, you're not supposed to be parking your vehicle on your driveway if it's blocking the sidewalk.
That's exactly right.
So we don't necessarily go by you're a single-family home and you can have 4 cars in your driveway. There's not an arbitrary number. It's based upon basically the size of your parking area driveway and the vehicles that you have. As it relates to other things in the yard, trailers and sort, I know that's changed over the years. What's your take on that you've seen for trailers?
Just that trailers need to be parked on a driveway surface.
So they're no longer allowed in the yard?
Correct. No longer allowed in the yard.
They need a hard surface of some type.
Correct. The brick, the asphalt, or concrete.
About the ones left out on the streets for months and months at a time, what are we gonna do about that? What can we do about that?
Street parking's gonna be PD.
Huh? Street parking?
Parking is a police department type of thing.
But I would say, it has to circle back somehow to the 12-hour parking rule to be enforced, and that's a difficult thing as well, I know, for our PD. And that kind of goes into a little bit into my next item is talking about ordinance review and changes and
Okay.
what can we do, or what have we done to be able to help us
Right.
and PD in some of these circumstances.
One question I had, I was
Go
wondering,
ahead.
is there, as far as, when it comes to ordinances and trying to follow through, you said 25%, or, can you give us a
Yeah.
level? Are they the homeowners? Is it anything to do with rental? Where is it at with that, as far as,
I will tell you this, that if it's related to rental, we have more teeth to get things accomplished than a single-family property owner.
Okay.
There's specific rules. Our rental property, I almost am glad when it's a rental property because I know we can dig in a little bit deeper and get results.
Oh, good to know. Thank you for that
Absolutely
information.
agree with Chief on that one. As soon as I hear it's a rental, it's like, okay, this'll be an easy fix.
Good.
So,
We got another rental on 13th. I just drove by today by another local group that's a rental property. I see a new sign there, so.
yeah. So, throughout the year, we'll make notes where we feel there could be a potential change in the ordinance to help us along. And most recently, we had a change in the home occupation ordinance that kind of helps define some things that will help us when we're out dealing with these issues. I know it makes it a lot easier. Mackenzie was really excited about that language change in the ordinance. I'm pretty sure that was not something you thought of as a kid you would be excited about, but here we are. And then even later tonight, during the council meeting, there's going to be a request for the zoning ordinance for permitted encroachments and additions to non-conforming structures. So some of these changes, the Community Development Director, Ken Roberts, has talked to us about and shared them with us. And it's been a good conversation to see, what we think we'll be able to, and what they're doing will help us as well. So we continue to do that, to look at those changes where they're needed. Trying to think of positive reinforcement to help us through the city to create and maintain a positive culture in our city about property maintenance. These are just thoughts and ideas that we've kind of threw together and have talked about. One of them's creating a thorough resident guide for our people. And I know we've talked about this and threw out some ideas, and not just related to code compliance, but the city in general that would be helpful for our residents. Also provide, code compliance information in the city newsletter. I know that was an idea our city manager had brought up, and we want to, take action on that as well. Some ideas of creating positive, videos to share on social media platforms on how people can maintain their properties and how they look, and, just to create pride in what you own. Other thought of utilizing our city website, potentially have a how to keep our city looking great section in our code compliance. Currently, we have a code compliance section, but, provide information. We do have some information online and resources, but maybe do something a little bit more to provide resources and how they can properly dispose of items. And, one of the big things we had each year that our Public Works in the city does is the spring cleanup. And I know, what a huge success that was this past spring. And I know the line was really long, but for our standpoint, we look at it as all the items that we're basically taking out of people's yards that were a potential problem, potentially, hopefully cleaning up the neighborhood, but trying to figure out how to continually, have some resources for our residents to get away or get rid of things. One of the newer big things out there is obviously the new Ramsey County recycling over in Roseville that does take a lot, and just guiding our people, our residents, to utilize it to get rid of stuff.
To add to that, with the positive reinforcement, we've started up some of them programs too. We're recognizing best-looking yards, best-looking gardens, or people that are putting out their Christmas lights, and just trying to do some kind of positive reinforcement for some of these people that are going the extra mile.
Yeah, because we do have, a lot of people out there that do a lot of hard work on their property and dress it up and do that. So keeping that going is always a good thing.
Do you think we should put some type of a welcome packet for new neighbors moving into the area? Mail that to them as a...
That's what I was meaning behind like a resident guide, whether it's a new resident guide for people coming in to, that could be given to them when they set up their utility bill here at the city, or
Right.
Just having that entire packet available as well online for people to see and or share those items that we could be directing people to utilize as well. Some of the other things I don't have in the PowerPoint that to help streamline our process that I'd like to look towards potentially in the next year, because the snow issues and the tall grass issues come a lot and heavy during those times. Looking at trying to provide, call it like a door knocker, if you will, because currently right now it's going out, inspecting, trying to get a hold of the property owner if they're not there. Well, even if they are there, talking to them, but even if they are or not there, we're sending them a letter. But just trying to make the process easier by creating potentially a small door knocker that would be an official way of notifying them, hey, you have a code violation. And I would only be using it on the snow removal on the sidewalk and the tall grass, just because the amount of those items that we've had, I've seen other communities do that. But with that, it's going to require you know, a little bit more cost in printing, stuff like that. Not major, but just something that we haven't done before, but I think it might help us time-wise address more issues and be able to deal with other things as well.
Now, how about like, cats and dogs? What, do you guys deal with more of that, or how do we, because I know there's a leash law, and, you know, cats are running freely nightly. And is there a way to curb that where the cats are not allowed to run freely? How do we deal with that?
So cats and dogs, the police department deals with that, I'd say 99% of the time. Depending on the issue, sometimes if it's an issue with, dog waste in somebody's yard, that would be, something that I would deal with, but, like cats running loose, dogs running loose, that's all gonna be a police department issue. And I know that they are, I think we all know that there's a kind of a big issue with stray cats in the neighborhood. And I know that that's something that the police department is looking to try to figure out a solution to.
Okay,
I don't know if they've gotten very far with that solution, unfortunately, there's just
Yeah.
not a whole bunch of options. But
right. No, and I really, yeah, it's just, I'm just asking a lot of questions.
Yeah. And that's basically what's next. Any more questions regarding code compliance or comments? Yeah.
I guess I have one question, and this might be for Jack, but in the, kind of middle ground between the notifications that Mackenzie and Chief Mallinger are doing, before we get to the, filing, filing something through our attorneys, is there an opportunity to do any kind of a fine or something like that, where we could, do something in the middle?
Sometimes is my number one lawyer's answer. It depends. So we do not have the general authority to issue fines. We don't
Okay.
have like a general fine for violation, which I guess candidly, our office is a little more conservative about. There are some cities that kind of take that and run with it a bit more.
Okay,
We do not see that there is legal authority anywhere to do that, and we see that as some cities are operating on a kind of wait until somebody appeals basis. We're not as comfortable recommending. There are some things, I think some of the weed and grass abatement stuff,
right.
where there is specific statutory authority for like a particular issue that may come up. And then we also always, sort of the first step in the escalation from code enforcement sending a letter, before we're actually going to go file any lawsuit, we do always send them a letter on our letterhead. And sometimes, it's one thing to get, sort of a city employee come say you got to do something.
But when you get
Sometimes there's a
letter
level
from
of
an attorney,
escalation when you actually get, I am the attorney who will be suing you, do this or I'm gonna. And that's
Okay.
also sometimes something we can do.
Couple questions. First, I want to say thank you very much. I do really appreciate the work that you do. I know it's a thankless position at times, but overall, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Two questions. One, have you guys had a chance to look at the zoning change coming later tonight, specifically the section on the permanently installed fireplaces, outdoor fireplaces, and do you like the way that's worded, or do you believe that's going to cause you any issues?
We did, again, look at it, and there's always a possibility, right? I like Jack's answer, sometimes.
Right.
But we did agree with the wording in it for.
Okay, nothing glaring, and you're okay if we pass it as it stands tonight?
Yes.
Awesome. And then my second question, because I happen to live along 120, my yard's different, and I maintain it to 120, but a lot of the yards don't maintain the 120 ditch, and the tractors go up and down 120. Is that actually a code violation, or is that, because the county I believe the county,
State,
state maintains it,
yeah.
how does that work?
Well, yeah, I know part of it, whether it's a city or a county or the state, a lot of times they want to maintain that right-of-way area and the grass just for visibility on the road. We're definitely not sending them notices on maintaining that area. However, we do have areas throughout the city that we have tall grass like that's grown, but we do not necessarily have enforced those areas to be mowed. I don't know. Other than, I'm thinking along the entire way where you live out there on 120,
Is that
we
at
would,
the end of the stop sign, the stopping of the cul-de-sac there then, up and beyond that?
No, I mean, a lot of the properties are on the east side of 120, but there's probably, I'll say 6 properties that choose not to maintain their ditch.
Yeah.
And let the state mow it. And I didn't know if that was okay, the way everything was worded, because the state maintains it, or if that was actually against code. I just didn't know.
yeah, I would say probably relating it back to our code, those areas should be maintained and cut. We have this issue as well where we have an easement, that's in an alleyway, it's a utility easement. And we sometimes have property owners that will go back into that area and mow it down and maintain it, but we also have areas where they don't. And those are areas, that utility easement area, we don't ever, enforce to be cut or mown down. Now, we do have, staff that will go through it regularly to make sure that overgrown brush and stuff like that is being cleared and maintained and not being dumped on, having materials so that they can get their equipment back there in case there's a storm that they need to get the power lines or for whatever reason back there. But there is some gray areas like that. That's one of them, for sure.
I appreciate you providing clarity, and again, thank you. I really appreciate the work that you do.
It's like over on McKnight too, where you got by Taco Bell, you got the woods and the big trees, and then the properties behind that, and this county's not taking care of that at all either.
Right, and we've tried to push them to do a little bit more with that and do some more mowing and tree cutting down, for sure.
So,
And we've had our
The
struggles.
state and the county, and good luck with that one.
Right.
How about when you have these rental properties and they let the weeds grow up along their fence lines and that without going in? Would you guys address something like that also? Now, we had the problem next to our former mayor, and the renters that are there now, they've been good renters, but they just don't maintain along his fence line and that. And how do we go about getting them folks to do a nicer job?
Yeah, that's the tough part, I'll be honest. We can notify people all day and night to be better about taking care of their yard. It's just going to be the amount of time and trying to get them to do it. But at the end of the day, if 99% of their yard is mowed and cleaned up, we usually have plenty others that are.
No, I understand.
Yeah, but I get what you're saying. There's there's that level of pride in bringing, even a tenant or a property owner of where you are and what you have and having it look nice, I think, whether it's on the outside or on the inside, that goes beyond, the average person.
Also, I would just like to let you guys know when you guys go by 14th and First tomorrow, it's gonna be a culture shock. It's unbelievable. You actually can see something. Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Glad to hear it. Thank you. Anything else?
I'd like to echo what Jason said. I hear all the stories, and some of them are not pleasant or fun to deal with, and really appreciate the work that you guys put into that.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's a tough position to have to go out there and talk to a property owner about something they did wrong. And like I said, a lot of times a property owner can be pretty good and be like, oh, I didn't know that, and understand the reasoning why. But most of the time, it's not. It's usually difficult, but I think Mackenzie's getting a thicker skin.
Well, thank you for that and appreciate it. Also, if, like we said before, if there's other things that you see that you think needs to be changed, that's, as far as different ordinances and things that just don't make sense anymore or need to be tightened, please let us know.
Yeah.
So we
Like
appreciate
to
that.
fix some new ordinances, and so we get some of these tightened up a little bit and
there's some
make the
that
city
just
look a
don't-
little nicer again.
They just
we
don't
wanna-
make sense.
We want to make sure we can provide a good living for everybody here.
You bet. And I just want to thank Jack for being here and answering questions, and remind the city to pay his bills, because we do use them often to help answer some areas that, as you can see, there's a lot of gray area, and sometimes we just need some guidance, and they usually can provide that for us, and most recently helped us out.
I got one more.
Go ahead.
About residents that had trees taken down, that just let their big stumps lay in their yard. Is there something we can do about that?
It's usually more when there's the majority of the tree there, that's an issue in creating a problem with rodent harborage and storage and those types of things to get rid of. One stump in the yard, although I can
But
say
I'm saying it's a big stump.
it's probably unsightly. I'm sure we could tie it to a code, but again,
Well, I'm just asking
Yeah.
questions, so in case I get someone, because I live over in that corner there, so seems like I'm getting the complaints from everybody,
for sure.
So all I gotta do is report it.
I will say that this is something that always, is a bit of a struggle, is there's definitely, there is a gap between, where you want it to be at and where it becomes legally actionable.
Right.
And, we can enforce the bare minimum,
Okay.
but we can't require that it look nice.
Also, trees are very expensive nowadays. Back in the day, you'd take your friend and a case of beer and you would cut down a tree on a weekend. Well, nowadays, it's $5,000 to get trees out of there and trying to get those. So it's
Easily.
quite
Yeah.
a burden. And, take one tree down, we give them two more. So we're adding to the problems down the line. As they all grow up.
Sure.
All right, anything else?
That's all I got.
No. Thanks again. Appreciate all the hard work.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Nothing else? Ask for adjournment?
So moved.
Don't move. Councilmember Norby, Councilmember McKenzie, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We will start up at 6:30. Thank you all.